Hello. The final lesson class of the day is arguably, as David Kelly would say, who's the founder of not just IDEO but the D School at Stanford, is possibly the most important class of the day, even though we're here to talk a lot about different subjects. This is the one that I find the most interesting, and it's design. And David Kelly talked about design thinking. And design thinking, just like we talked about the internet earlier not being a technology, is a way about thinking about the world, the way you design organizations, the way you design systems, the way you just think about the reality in which you live in and work. And why I'm really excited about this is because in my mind, particularly when you look at the work that Eyal and Roland have produced, have made, have manufactured, out of ideas inside their heads, I think it sort of brings to life in a remarkable way, what we've been talking about. So we're gonna, Eyal, I think maybe just briefly also, you guys will all introduce yourselves. Gideon is going to be moderating the discussion. And then after this, I'd sort of ask you guys to just hang out for another 10-15 minutes, because we've got a big announcement to end the day with, which hopefully will be interesting as well. So I met Eyal about 2.5 years ago when I was living in Israel. One of the things that bamboozled me about Israel was this was a country that, was selling oranges 25 years ago. Now it's all about tech. And, when you went to Israel, you got all of these amazing technologists, but this was a country in which, 2,000 years ago, some pretty good stories came out of Israel. And this is also a country where, as Roland knows, one of the greatest industrial designers in the world, Ron Arad, is from Israel, some great architects, some great musicians. And in a country of like 7.5 million people, it was like the right brain and the left brain weren't in the same head. And when I met Eyal, it was the first time I saw both sides of the brain inside the same person. So that's Eyal.
Thank you. Okay, so you hear me? Yeah. A quick background. First, thank you for having me. It's I'm really honored. It's a great event. Quick background. So I studied art all my life. I've been passionate about art. Studied probably 14 years history of art, anatomy, painting, sculpting, everything. Went to the army, was in this elite combat unit, got injured, volunteered back to the computer intelligence force. This is where I got exposed to computers, and actually I got exposed to computer simulations. And my role was actually to do all sorts of simulations so people won't get killed, so they can simulate that. To make a long story short, I went to study art, but while being a student, I was one of the first in the country who actually knew computer simulations, so I found myself creating one of the first startups in the country. And so for 17 years, I went through this roller coaster of being a high-tech entrepreneur, building 3D, companies that do 3D software for gaming, etc. 3 years ago, I sold my company, decided to do art totally. It took me 9 years to build what you're going to see now. And basically what I do, my art, my palette is based on code. What I do, I create all those situations, those intense situations that are based on some physical events. So in this case, it's a wall crashing. But then what I do, I choose the moment, the epic moment of this particular situation, and I use 3D printers to actually print them. And so this sculpture, the wall is like 1.5 meters, and the one in the front is out of an oil simulation. So it's almost like as if I've created this kind of a high-speed virtual camera, and I'm letting you, the viewer, experience time, a moment in time as a sculpture. To me, art is all about when somebody is actually experiencing the art. Otherwise, it doesn't exist. It doesn't mean anything. Another example is a nuclear explosion. This is not video. This is all physics and mathematics. It has millions and millions of particles. Now, yes, I agree. I mean, I find beauty in some crazy, weird places. I'm in search for sublime. I think the world it has this equality of craziness, ugliness, and beauty, and all together, 24 hours in the same moment, parallel everywhere. So here in this particular thing, this is a massive simulation where I then froze, and chose a moment and fabricated in those. You see it in the back in those kind of transparent layers. In the front, it's a 2.5 meter sculpture, and I don't know how familiar you are with 3D printing, but to make a 2.5, 3 meter sculpture is out of a 3D printer, it's pretty hard to do and expensive. So this is about collisions, and all the colors I chose are literally of the real cars manufacturers. So you have red Ferrari, you have the silver of a Mercedes, and I just had the intellectual interest to crash them and collide them and then freeze a moment. Here's a huge, large sort of suspension of smoke, which is an output of this simulation. So I'm running fast because Sol told me not more than 5 to 10 minutes, and I want to show a few new things. So this is a large-scale physical smoke simulation. This is a 5-meter sculpture that is actually fabricated now. It's going to be in this modern art museum. And it's at this moment where this waterfall comes. Now, many artists through history tried to sort of, or dealt with painting storms or catastrophes, but it was sort of for their imagination. What I do here, I kind of parse this mathematical data into the printer and fabricate it. Okay, so I've done catastrophes to express myself. And the next thing I said, okay, how about that I'll take data from music and sound and let that drive the sculpture or the art. So for the last year and a half, I've started to do a lot of work with sound. And so this is the early experiments. Can you dim the light a little bit?
All right! Already, many of the music. And now, on today's program. Hello.
So here I'm basically starting to analyze
why he's here.
Thank you, and thank you to Saul and Index and all of the organizers and the Royal Society of Architecture for organizing this and inviting me to speak today. It's a real honor. I am the founder and CEO of a company called Rolly, and we've developed a new musical instrument that I invented called the Seaboard. So I believe we're going to show a 1-minute video just to let you have a sense of where I'm coming from, and then I'd like to talk a little bit about coding, design, and education. So as it loads up, the Seaboard is a new musical instrument that's based on the piano keyboard. It's an evolution of the piano keyboard, and it brings together certain aspects of digital technology with certain aspects of traditional musical instrumentation. Can we start the video? It'll come when it comes. I'm going to speak until it does. So, oh, here we go. An unusual school called Summerhill, which many of you will know as an alternative school where there are no mandatory lessons and all of the rules in the school are decided on democratically. Kind of an experiment in education. And but then I went on to study philosophy at Harvard, and then came back to the United Kingdom to do a degree in design at the Royal College of Art. And then became an inventor and entrepreneur. And, you know, so I've done coding and I've done design, and I really support the initiative that, you know, to make coding a central part of the curriculum, but actually not as a skill. I don't think coding is an important skill. In fact, I think we should all conduct a thought experiment, which is like, as a skill per se, is it more important for us to base the curriculum around coding or around Chinese? Arguably, if all of us learn Chinese and all of our children learn Chinese, it would have more applications as a skill in the 21st century than coding, because not everyone needs to code. And if you think about Eyal's claim, which I think is right, that in the next 20 to 50 years, our immersion in the digital world is going to radically change. Most of that immersion is not going to be through coding. It's going to be through other forms of interface. So coding as an interface is really not going to be a primary interface, and most people don't need to know how to code. Having said that, I think that coding is more important than learning Chinese, not as a skill, but as a thought process and as a form of education. Because really, for me, the two most important aspects of education are passion and plasticity. So passion in that people feel a sense of empowerment and engagement with the world on a moment-to-moment and day-to-day basis. And that comes hand in hand with plasticity, which is that everything in the world can be changed to some degree. And so many of our institutions, our social forms, economic forms, even conceptual forms are plastic. They can be altered. But what we need to learn in education are the conditions of plasticity. We need to learn how much can things be changed and how can they be changed. And coding is one of the best and most interactive ways to understand the conditions of plasticity. So it's a fantastic initiative to bring coding to the center of education, and I think we should do the same thing with design. And it's also about understanding the conditions of plasticity, but in this case not the conditions of conceptual plasticity that we engage with in coding, but the conditions of physical plasticity. Because for people to understand that everything that we engage with physically in the world can be changed, can be reimagined, is a really important form of fundamental education. And again, it's not as a skill. It's not necessarily that people need to know CAD or need to know how to do 3D printing, but it's to have that knowledge that the world can be changed and to have experience associated with that. So actually I think Eyal's work is really important in that regard because it's, I mean, for me it's partly about reverse plasticity. It's taking, often we engage, we see an object in the world, and then we have to imagine that actually that object is a whole process. And what Eyal's work does is it takes a process and it translates it into an object. But that line between the process and the object is not fixed. And to the extent that we can have different ways of engaging with that, whether it's through understanding, the objects within code versus the processes that they engender and allow, or the ways in which the processes of physical design allow us to reimagine the physical objects of the world, like pushing on those boundaries, I think is an essential deep thought process. And so to that extent, to the extent that it really engenders plasticity and passion, this initiative towards making code a central part of the way that we think about education is great. And I say that both as an individual, as a father, and as now an employer, that that's a kind of core set of skills that we would want people to have. That's not a skill per se, but an ability and a way of imagining the world.
Great. Just by way of introduction, I'm Gideon Spanier, and I'm a media editor at the Evening Standard newspaper. So I cover all aspects of creative industries and technology, and I'm blown away by what I've seen. I know my children would be. So Gary England is on my left, and he's well qualified to judge how children are coping with this, because he's a teacher in Wiltshire, and he teaches design and technology at St John's Academy. He's the STEM coordinator, which means he looks after science, technology, engineering and maths. So my first question is how would your kids in your classes, I'm sure they'd be tremendously inspired by what they've just seen.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd really agree with Roland about the skills in terms of, we teach a variety of design topics. We go through the disciplines. Students look at designing with food, graphics, resistant materials, with textiles, and I think coding is just another one of those skills, one of those sort of materials or technologies in which they're able to apply a whole range of life skills. And as Roland said, they're more important because the materials will develop new materials, or we'll run out of materials and have to think about new materials. Technologies will modernize, and so the students that I'm teaching today probably won't be using those technologies when they, should they go into higher education and then into industry. And so really what we're trying to build is a sense of resilience in the students. We want them to show the compassion, show that they can understand the needs of other people, and whether they're designing a pizza for someone with celiac disease or whether they are looking at other needs of other individuals, if they can understand, if they can research, analytical skills, that means that they can take in what other people need from a product and design and creatively develop a range of solutions to a problem, that can be applied to almost anything in life. And the problem-solving process that we use in our heads from day-to-day life is so similar to the product design process. And so design is such an important part of the curriculum, and by linking to all of the other subjects, we touch on such huge issues. And so, we want to make sure that students are creative, but they work in teams. Designers work in teams. So if we can build team working skills, if we can build leadership skills, creativity, reflection on their work and being able to test and modify and improve their designs in this continual loop of sort of improving and refining and testing, that's what we do in our day-to-day lives. So, it's really important that they make, because in design and technology, they enjoy the subject. It's one of the most, if you walk through a school, it's one of the most engaging subjects, where in a classroom, students are so busy, they are working, they're solving problems, and hopefully they're achieving as well. And so the self-satisfaction that they get from achieving, making something physical, is obviously really important. I think in terms of creativity, the curriculum, if it's nice and open, can enhance that. I'm not sure you can teach creativity in a way, whether you just need to give opportunity for students to be able to be creative with a range of materials and range of opportunities. And we don't want them to stifle creativity, try and go with ideas. And so, in the classroom, there are obviously restrictions, but we want to make sure that we continue to put the emphasis on design, and hopefully with the sort of push for coding, people will see that as putting design at the forefront as well.
Great. Eyal, you talked about finding beauty in crazy places, and is there, in your experience, is the classroom and can children get exposed to craziness and disruptive thinking and original thinking? Because it's an interesting question about how you introduce it in the curriculum.
Here's a story. My kids go to a Rudolf Steiner school, and my daughter, she was so lucky because she had the most amazing teacher I've ever met. She looked great. She's so intelligent, so smart, and also she realized that I'm not a typical father. And it was a precise moment where there was a bar mitzvah event for the kids. And I was like having my beer with the bad boys of the class on the bar. And she comes to me and she hugs me and she said, "You're really a bad example, but I'm crazy about you. Can you come out for a second?" And basically she said, "Look, we're teaching now the kids about revolutions in history. And can you basically, make a presentation about revolutions in art?" And the reason I'm telling this story is because it requires an amazing, inspirable teacher to identify whether it's me as an eccentric father or a kid that may be the kid in the back, the weird kid that sits in the back. And I think the only purpose for a great teacher is really sort of not to dictate the kid and enforce fear, but rather nurture and guide, but really let them kind of be free and express themselves. So I definitely think so. But I think most of the teachers are either exhausted or not well paid, or they have too many kids in class, and it's just an exhausted system.
Roland, do you have, in your experience, ideas about how you could make the teaching of design, for a start, have a greater role in the curriculum, and to encourage kids to be inspired?
Yes, I do. I think actually this field is really being influenced by startups today, and by the maker movement, by projects like Kano, projects like Codecademy, Little Bits, because part of the issue is the tools. It's not just about curriculum. It's not like us saying, "Oh, let's teach design." It's how do we teach design? How do we engage people? How do we get people to interact with design, with technology, in ways that are intuitive? And often the first format that things come to us is one that's very difficult to use. And if it's about design and the kind of engineering techniques can take years to get a handle on. So things that allow people to actually play, like Little Bits is a nice example, which many of you must be aware of. They make these simple kind of electronic circuits that you can magnetically click together. And these sorts of things actually give children something physical and tactile that they can build from, and that they can learn about technology with. So I definitely think that this is something that like early interesting hardware startups are beginning to play with, explore. I also think hardware is an important piece of this, that kids need particular physical things to play with and touch and interact with, and that by doing that you can lower the barriers of entry. So code is great, but even before code or before you reach that stage, having tools, technological tools and toys that allow you to combine and recombine elements to understand some of the conceptual architecture of code, but also some of the other elements that go into building a technological system are really, really important. So I would say that making sure that those tools are widely available, and even finding ways to support the development of those kinds of tools and technologies is really a key part of making design endemic to education.
Sorry, I just wanted to add about design. To me, design, I think it's fundamental. Now, probably 90.9 of the kids won't be great designers. However, the fundamental thing about design is a process of thinking and having a clear funnel of getting to something which is very clean and very optimized and well thought. And that's a tool that doesn't matter eventually what you do. You want to write a book, you want to manage people. I mean, just having this approach to sort of keep on sharpening and sharpening and sharpening. This is what design is all about. And I think that's what's the fundamentals about that anybody can learn. Eventually they may be terrible designers, but their thinking process is like an architecture, right?
It's very interesting, and certainly my limited experience of talking to some people involved in this area, I think one of the interesting things is encouraging kids that it's okay to fail to succeed. You've got to iterate a lot. And I'm wondering, Gary, since you're teaching kids, what would be a way to reimagine the basic school day? I don't know how much you're harnessed at your school by the national curriculum. We see here in our event schedule about in entrepreneurship and coding and design. They're not the kind of subjects you see enough of, if at all, in the curriculum, in my experience.
Well, I think there's definitely the sort of constrictions that we have on us, the way the school's judged in league tables and things, and growing emphasis on English, maths, and science as such. Personally, I'd love to see design more at the centre of the curriculum because it links so well to those other subjects. Okay, you think about the sort of sustainability aspect. We live on a planet of finite resources, yet we use them at such a huge rate. And I ran a project with Hilary Chittenden and the RSA called The Great Recovery. It's an RSA project, and opening the minds of students to think about the impact that technology has on the planet. We are shown such a small part of marketing and the sales of, say, a mobile phone, but we have such little awareness of the impact that has on the world that we live in. These students are growing up and they're doing their various subjects and hopefully making links between those subjects, but that world is changing, and it's going to change within their lifetime. We're going to run out of materials, and we are going to have to change. We're going to have to adapt, and so we have to provide students with the ability to show resilience, show that they can change and adapt like animals do. We need to make that more part of the curriculum, the school day, not just pigeonhole the subjects, but show that they can achieve, they can obviously build their sort of self-worth, but their understanding of the world and the planet that they live on. And I think we don't understand enough of that global impact, and I think I would put a lot more emphasis on design, and something's going to have to change quickly, otherwise, the planet isn't going to be the planet that they see now.
Okay, I'm keen to open the floor to questions. We've got an all-male panel. I've got 2 daughters, so I'm very keen to hear from women, especially because I think some of the stats back up the fact that a lot of girls at school are not doing computer science, and it can feel very male-dominated and so on. So I don't know if anyone from the floor has a question, and it could be inspired by anything during the day.
My name is Martin Stevens. I'm the CEO of a startup called It Is 3D, and you may be able to divine from the name that it's something to do with 3D technologies. And this, it's more of an observation than a question, but it applied just as much to the first session this morning as it does to this one, which is about design and creativity, and that 3D printing, which has been mentioned quite a number of times today, and Gove has mentioned it a couple of times recently, is a useful tool in helping kids to learn, but it is only a tool, as with so many other tools in school, and that unless pupils are given the opportunity of learning how to design, giving them the tools to design, also harnessing the inherent creativity that they have when they're young. If school does anything, it tends to knock that out of them rather than encouraging or reinforcing it. And I think that we in this room, the schooling community, and anybody who can influence it needs to take hold of this issue of design, making it much more part of the curriculum, and bringing it in at an early stage and trying to hang on to it right through the schooling period.
Good. And Roland, do you want to say anything? We've heard from Eyal about how he gets on with his kids' teacher very well. What will be your plan with your son when he grows up?
My plan with my son will be to give him as many alternatives as possible. There was a phrase that I love from Professor Unger, Roberto Unger, who's the founder of critical legal theories, which says that we have to resist the dictatorship of no alternatives. And I think often, when we're talking about policy, we think this should be the curriculum. But actually, there should be many curriculums. There should be many different approaches. And so for my son personally, I want him to have a lot of alternatives in terms of how he will, what he will study and how he will approach things. And I think it's a very different question from an individual point of view than from a social or a policy point of view. Because, often policy is kind of the best average that we can take. But from an individual point of view, you have a lot more information about what a given individual may or may want or need. And much of that needs to come from the individual. So to the extent that that then can become a condition for policy, it is that we need policies that allow a lot of specification within a curriculum for different people. And some, you look through this list today, and some children should be focusing in some areas and some in others. And there's a few core skills that everyone needs. There's a few sort of core areas. But actually, a lot of it should be driven by the individual. And this is part of the philosophy of Summerhill that I think they get right, which is that one of the most important things to leave school with is motivation. And if school kills your motivation, it's killed the most important part of you. And so to the extent that you can parent or teach in such a way that you're supporting the development of self-motivation, it's a hugely important core foundation for someone to then go out and change the world, or create art, or create a company, or have an impact, because they have an internal motivation to go out and do something. So I think that would be sort of a core value, and certainly all of these other elements might come into play.
More questions?
Hello, I'm Luke. I'm a software engineer, but I don't want to talk about me. I want to talk about my other half, who isn't here, unfortunately, because she's busy being a theatrical, or studying to be a theatrical lighting designer. The day's been particularly resonating with me, partly because 24 hours ago, I was on a site-specific theatre play, and on my knees helping her solder 50 LEDs into plastic bottles that had been dipped in wax to pretend to be candles, controlled by 2 Arduino controllers so that they flickered and then gradually faded over 12 minutes. And basically she likes to make things and likes to combine technology and art, which has been nice. But one of the big problems she faces is the fact that failure isn't an option anymore. You know, it's real life stuff. So it's sort of at 5:30 in the afternoon, after loading the show file into the program board, our stuff went fine. That was perfect. Arduino's easy, done, dead easy. The show file wouldn't load, wouldn't fail. That's it, no show, no lights, nothing else works. Panic, what do you do? So we're emailing this thing back and forth, we're getting it checked, we're onto ETC on the phone and stuff like that, and she's just panicking because she hasn't been through failure. She hasn't grown up with failure. I've been programming software for 13 years, so I've been failing every day. That's how we do it, we keep failing. But I help her out by wombling. I make good use of the things that I find. I'm not very good at I'm not creative, I'm not a designer. She's the design part. And I'm coming to a question, but basically this morning I used my trigonometry for her. She's building a massive 2-meter tall spiral to fill with light bulbs to take to Australia to showcase sustainability in the development of LED bulbs for the Vivid Lighting Festival. I'm not allowed to say that yet because it hasn't been announced, but anyway. And they need to, a spiral's quite difficult to build, so the solution is get some trunking, cut the trunking, and then 3D print the parts that are going to interlock them. And of course the angles change each time and have to do it quite delicately. So we just pulled up Excel, we modeled it, did a little program to alter the angle each time, and did the sine, cosine, got the angles fine. Got to that stage, we got the angles fine. Now we just need to CAD them. And that's hard. CAD's really, really hard still. So we've had that moment when Tim Berners-Lee took SGML, cut it down to HTML. He just simplified a complicated spec to a level where anyone can literally just construct a page and put it on the internet. And we've sort of seen Wolfram Alpha try to do that with visualization and sort of programming and etc. When and is it ever going to happen for CAD, just to make it?
I work very close with Autodesk. Autodesk is, for those of you who don't know, they're the largest leading 3D software company in the world. They have from AutoCAD, AutoCAM, but also 3D Studio Max, Maya. So any special effects, movie, animation, furniture, whatever, normally it's being done with their software. And so my relationship with them, they basically heard about my work and what I do, and this left brain, right brain, and my experience as a software developer in 3D software, they're basically using me in a way to envision the future of how 3D software is going to be. And a lot of what the work we're doing is, enable me to do my crazy art, but also porting to a point where there's a lot of automation and a simple interface and simplification. To a point where, imagine that there is a crystal ball that knows what are the physical constraints of a table. And you just say, I want to build a table, and it will show you different templates that you can customize and refine. And you shouldn't even think about the manufacturing issues, if it's watertight for printing, if it's, you're just going to just enjoy the creative process while all the mechanisms. So I do believe it's going to happen, and I know what's already is being cooked. And we are working with some amazing tools. I mean, I'm just helping them, but I'll tell you something that I have a challenge with, okay? So NASA approached me. NASA approached me because they're building a printer that they're designing to print in space, and they're designing a printer that can print in zero gravity, and they're going to ship it to space in August. And they said, well, how about that you'll be the first artist in history to make a sculpture?
Why? Explain why they're creating a zero
because 40% of the things in the space station can be printed. And so it's much more expensive to send something to space versus to set a cut file and just print it in space, right? So now I'm thinking, okay, wow, what kind of sculpture am I going to do? And my challenge is
you're going to crowdsource. So anyone who's got good ideas for the first sculpture.
So here is the challenge, right? So I know the software, I know the CAM, I can simulate anything, but what is okay, so we know in anti-gravity when you throw something, it will never stop. But I want to create, so first my idea was, okay, I will make a sculpture and it will be like a graffiti of God. Everybody's looking for God, so it's going to be God. The second idea said, okay, I want to make an animated sculpture, right? I want something to constantly move because there's zero gravity. So my problem now is how the heck will I calculate, because every collision or friction, there is an execution of energy. And nobody's done it before. So that's a problem I'm dealing with.
Maths and code to help.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's moving to simplification very quickly. It's all about, again, passion, idea, and basically, obviously talent, but clarity of thinking. The rest, all the day you're saying coding, 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 coding. My biggest fear is that 5 years from now, a kid on the, somewhere in the class will be so bored from this coding class because he's really a great thinker and he really has an amazing idea, but he knows what to tell a lot of other coders what to do. It's not great for everybody, and so I don't want you guys to apply mistakes we've done before on a new subject. This is where we have to change the approach totally, and the approach is funnel. Pay attention. Every person is so different, and some will be so good as soccer players, some will be great musicians, and you know what? And a lot of people need to do the hard work also. Somebody needs to cleanse the window, right? That's the way the world works. So applying everything and equality of data and knowledge to everybody and expect that you're making a revolution, I think it's A, it's awesome, but B, it requires also new changing. It's an object-oriented thinking, really.
I think, should we go for 20 seconds or even? We can keep going. Fantastic. More questions. Has anyone got another question? We're still waiting for a woman to step up.
There's one right there.
Good.
Hello, my name is Zoe Rose. I'm a content designer at Government Digital Service. This is my second question today because I'm greedy. Actually, it's not really a question. I just want to make a comment about the importance that design can have in the most practical point of life. My friend and I are about to volunteer our services at Addenbrooke's Hospital, where the labour ward that they have there currently has design sufficiently bad that the women who show up become lost, confused, and actually find themselves in danger because of faults in design. So this is a point where it's easy to talk about the abstract and the impractical. Everybody in this room probably spends most of their life behind a computer. Behind our computers, we're actually developing skills, especially in areas like design, like the practical application of communication as it exists in the real world, whether it's through augmented reality or just a sign on the door that says you go through here, that actually make, in some instances, the difference between being in danger and not being in danger. So these are not abstract points that we've heard from here. These are points of practicality. I'd also like to advertise, if anyone would like to help me, that would be fantastic.
I just wanted to, before we make the announcement and wrap up the session, because one of the things that we've tried to do today is get a lot of the different voices in the country who are sort of focusing on these issues. I think downstairs throughout the day, we've had primary school kids having hands-on experience with making computers with Kano, learning to code with Codecademy, writing stories with Storybird, doing maths with Slate Science, doing piano with Tonara. We've got other real innovators in the room today. We've got Emma from Littlebridge, who, do you want to stand up for a sec, was, I think, best in show at BET this week. Her company is teaching 6 to 12-year-old kids around the world to learn English. We've got Michael and Davinia from Mind Candy and Moshi. We've heard from Google. We've heard from the BBC. I just wanted to take 1 minute because Graham and Colin are here from Sky, And, you know, one of the things I remember vividly 18 months ago, sitting with Colin and talking about the challenges he was having hiring developers, because he said, well, we've got 1,000 developers at the time. You probably got a lot more now at Sky. And one of the great things for these developers is that every day they write code that touches not 500 million people like Sherry was talking about before in countries that you can't see or touch, but actually in your country, you know, watching Premier League, watching the news, etc. And I've been really blown away, and Graham, I think, just talk for 60 seconds about it, what you guys have done, not just in terms of engaging with the community, but putting skills like centrally as part of your company agenda. So before, you know, we wrap up today, because I think, you know, you talk about design and you talk about putting things that matter to people in front of them and how important it is. These guys are designing a UI that a lot of people care about, and whether we like it or not, Premier League is a primary British UI. And so, you know, how are we going to get people excited about what we're doing? We're going to engage with sports, and we're going to engage with fashion, and we're going to engage with music as well. So I just wanted to give you 60 seconds.
Thanks, Saul. Well, tomorrow actually is our 25th birthday at Sky, so we've been around 25 years. And so to mark that occasion, we've launched what we're calling the Sky Academy, with the goal of creating opportunities for 1 million young people under 25s by the end of the decade. And it's all around skills and practical experience. And there's a number of ways in which we're doing this. And I just, you know, encourage anyone to get involved, get your schools involved, come out and see us. But one of the things we've got is a dedicated studio facility out at our campus in West London, where school kids can come out and they can come in their class and they can make a little TV program for the day, and it's all built around kind of life skills and teamwork, and they get a really sort of practical experience out of it. And we've had 12,000 kids through in the first year, and we're opening a second one later this year up in Livingston in Scotland. So, you know, we're really trying to kind of bring the world of work in a really practical way to young people and really enthuse them about the opportunities there. And then, you know, from that, there are other things that we do around graduate work experience, apprentices, and so on. And the other thing, the great opportunity we have, obviously working in the entertainment businesses, we've got a whole load of inspirational role models that we work with. So David Beckham is our Sky Academy ambassador. We're with Jessica Ennis-Hill. We're working with people in the arts. We're working with people in business as well, and we're kind of using them to kind of act as role models and really inspire people. So if anyone wants to get involved or wants to get their schools involved, their own kids involved, just look at the website Sky Academy that tells you all the ways that you can join in. We'd really love to sort of hear from you and for you to be part of it with us.
Thank you. Sorry to just pull you out, but couldn't resist the free ad to Sky. Okay, and I'm a Virgin customer, by the way. But we live in an open society, so you have no problem with me saying that, I know. So, listen, this has been a really inspiring day. Weren't quite sure how it's all going to turn out, and she's not even here, but I just wanted to point out Kate. Is she here? No, she's not in the room, so it means she's still hustling. Kate and a bunch of people, Nadia, Bex, etc., helped pull this together. The idea was that this was a beginning of a conversation around skills. It's been amazing to be hosted here by the RSA today, because, you know, it's a really, I think as David Putnam or someone else said during the day, it's an inspiring space in terms of the fusion of the arts and the sciences. I think, by the way, I've been asked if people could just move up or come and sit down before we do the announcement. And I just wanted to thank everyone who's come along and who's been involved in the panels. A lot of the people you've seen today, you know, hopefully some of them you'll have heard from before, others maybe not. We're probably going to do this again if people think it's a good idea. I know people are kind of either knackered at this stage or enthusiastic, so I'm going to test the knackered versus, is it a good idea to do this again next year? So I think the RSA, and I'm not saying this because just because you clapped. The RSA had kindly offered that we can do this again next year. So that's good. And I think, this year we try to focus on skills in K-12. A lot of people said, what's K-12? Because it's kind of American. It's kindergarten to year 12. I don't know what the topic should be next year, but if anyone would like to help us think about that and get involved, we'd be more than thrilled to be helped there, because it's definitely not our day job to put on events. So we're going to have an announcement fairly soon, and I'm going to just prelude the announcement with the fact that we talked earlier today about heritage in the UK, and that from Ada Lovelace to Alan Turing to Tim Berners-Lee to Mike Moritz, and then a new generation of startups that are beginning to emerge. Britain and the UK have taken a fairly fundamental role in the creation of new technologies. We've debated, the role that code can or should play within the curriculum going forward. And it is happening in September, whether we like it or not. So I guess, my approach is, how can we make this as successful as possible? We're not all going to agree on how it should be taught, or who should teach it, or what outcomes we should measure. But I think one thing, at least I've taken out of today, is that however we teach it, it has to be inspiring. It has to be something that puts at the very front what it does, makes music, makes art, helps you choose football teams, helps you design, games, and, the skills and the attitude that we can learn by having coding as part of the national curriculum has to be a big opportunity. And what we're going to hear at some point in the next 5 minutes, and I promise you, because I can't keep going, even though there are people in this room who know I probably can, but it'll get boring in a second. Might be boring already. Is that, I'd encourage everyone here, and what's been amazing is we've got a bunch of people here from Israel, from Finland, from Estonia. The UK has become a test site for how to make coding a nationwide thing. We will guaranteed not get it right, because you would never get a 1.0 right. But, hopefully with people's support and encouragement, both within the UK and outside of the UK, we can learn how to do it properly. And also we can get a lot of inspiration and a lot of learnings from other people. So the guys are going to come in a minute and talk about the year of code. What is the year of code? They'll explain to you. It is basically, we're hoping a 12-month, a year-long campaign where we can get all different aspects of UK society, not just schools, but parents, teachers, industry, small business, startups, sort of involved in trying to make this something that means something to people. And I really would just encourage all of you guys who are passionate about this subject to make sure that you're involved, because the idea is to really create a nationwide campaign that anyone can be involved in, because there's a huge amount of great work that has been going on already. And it's really between now and September that we're going to see if this is something that is going to be a success or not. So any moment now. The folks, well, I think, first of all, why don't we just say, before the people come on stage, just say thanks to this panel. I hope I sold it pretty hard. I hope it was as inspiring as I thought it would be. And you can pre-order Roland's keyboards at weareroly.com. You can marvel at Eyal's art at eyalgever.com, and if you're young enough, maybe you can go and be taught at your school. And thanks to Gideon as well. Okay. All right, so apparently people can relax for 5 minutes, and we'll be back. Kate is in the room now. Where is Kate? Okay, so thank you to Kate, who put all of this together. We'll be back with you after the no intermission. You can watch, maybe you should watch some more Roly videos or Eyal slides before. Sure.
If I can just ask, hello? If I want to ask Saul a question. He's talked about this is going to be the year of coding, but today's discussion has been about a lot more than just coding. It's about the future of our kids, it's about their skill sets, it's about the creativity and the innovation and the economic success of the nation. This has been a great event, but my question is, what is going to come out of this? I would like to hope that it's going to be more than just a one-day's discussion, but that somebody, whether it's Saul's organization, whether it's the RSA, or somebody else, is going to pick up and run with some of the great ideas that have been mooted today.
I mean, great challenge. It's not going to be our organization, but it is, because they're doing it already. It is going to be Google, it is going to be Sky, it is going to be the BBC, it is going to be the government, it is going to be Raspberry Pi, it is going to be Decoded, it is going to be Code Academy, it is going to be Kano. And the, all we're doing here is really, I think, trying to get people in the same room together. Avid is here. Avid is affiliated to an amazing organization in the US called Code.org. If anyone saw the Hour of Code that they did in November, it's a very different type of approach to what we're doing in the UK. Zach is here from Code Academy. I think there is so much going on. What we're trying to do, both with this event and with the Year of Code, is to really sort of help everyone sort of focus on a couple of key agenda items. One, in September, schools are going to open, and kids are going to come in, and they're going to be taught how to code. Who's going to teach them? What are they going to learn? I know probably almost as much as you do on that subject. I've learned a lot more today. I agree with you. Skills is a much broader subject than coding, which is why we had so much diversity on today's curriculum. But this is just a one day at school. I mean, if you want to come back for tomorrow, it means we've succeeded. We're good. All right. I don't know who introduces this next. But I've got the microphone. Okay. We good? Yeah? I don't know, it's Michael Jackson. I don't think it's Michael Jackson. Have you simulated Michael Jackson? You could do that, right? Any other points that people want to make while we're
I've already spoken today. I'm from Latimer Upper School. I'm actually sitting here feeling quite proud because we do a lot of these things in our school. We have a 3D printer. We have a course which collaborates between 5 core subjects. I could go on, and obviously I'm in a very privileged position, but these things are happening in schools. And I'm here today to think more about skills, and I will be feeding back to my school. So I suppose to encourage, there are things happening, and people are excited about it in education.
I mean, that is great to hear, and I think one of the things I just want to emphasize is that, you know, one of the things we really wanted to do with this event, and, you know, it wasn't obvious to me when we were putting it together, it was made really obvious to me by people who are, I think, much smarter on this subject than I am, is that we had to have teachers here, because there is an amazing amount of good stuff going on. And the other thing is that we had to have students actually, you know, who are using these tools, and hopefully everyone has had a chance today to see real kids using all of the tools that you see here, coding with Code Academy, making a computer with Kano, writing a story with Storybird. So, I mean, I think the kids and the teachers and the parents is fundamentally what this is all going to be about. So now over to Rohan. Do you want to come in and just, Martha? So Rohan is, I'm fortunate to have Rohan as a colleague, and he's been a prime mover, I guess, in the last few years at inspiring our institutions to think creatively about how to think about technology. And, you know, as we said throughout the day, the fact that we do have a national education policy that allows every kid in the country to code from this September is something we should be really proud of in the UK. And the fact that only little Estonia beat us, you know, is a fantastic thing. So I'm just going to hand over to Rohan, who's going to introduce the Year of Code.
Thanks all. Hi everyone, I'm here, as Saul says, to kick off this final session of the day. As you've probably noticed, the event has been very cleverly structured to echo a school day. We've had maths, we've had arts and humanities, a bit of English, a bit of history, a bit of music, I think, and science. So we're now at the end of the day, and yet we're all still here, which I think technically means that we're in the part of the school day that I know best, and that's detention. And like the great 80s film, we're going to keep you all occupied in this detention session with a great cast of characters. And the point of this session, as you see from this slide, is to launch the Year of Code, an incredibly ambitious national campaign to get the whole country excited about computer science and learning new skills. And to set the scene for this session and this campaign, it's a great privilege to introduce John Brown, the President of the Queen's Prize for Engineering, and someone who's done perhaps more than anyone else to extol the virtues of engineering as a great imperative for the country's economy, but also a great source of the country's cultural wealth and creative wealth too. So, John.
Rohan, ladies and gentlemen, I'm here as, I think, as Chairman of the Queen Elizabeth Prize for Engineering, which, at least between these four walls, I'd like to call the new Nobel Prize for Engineering, and that's what it's designed to be. This year, we awarded it to 5 people who invented the World Wide Web, the Internet, and the browser. And those 5 people created an engineering system which we now all rely upon and is defining our future. And that engineering system was, of course, built not of screws and right-angle bends, but of code. It was built of code, and that, I think, demonstrates just how important this event and this week is, because it's about code, it's about the logic that they actually understood, that's standing us in very good stead 25 years on 250 years on, probably, as we go forward. As a personal story, I graduated in physics in the late 60s to find out that the physics market had fallen completely into disarray. There was nothing to do. One of the things I did learn at Cambridge was how to code. And so I became an engineer. And my engineering started by learning about engineering in the field, but actually then about coding. And that's what gave me actually my breakthrough in business, is I developed a piece of code that lasted actually for just about 25 years. It's superseded now. It simulated a big oil field. But it lasted 25 years. The World Wide Web is going to last much longer than that. But to me, it's a very personal moment as well. But it's a pleasure and a great privilege to be here. Rowan, over to you.
So next up, we have Martha Lane Fox, the founder of lastminute.com, and one of the most passionate advocates of coding and entrepreneurship and education in the country. Martha.
Well, it may be detention, but I'd like to offer you a piece of virtual birthday cake, because as John said, it is the 25th birthday of the World Wide Web this year. And I cannot think of a better birthday present to the country than a massive increase in the number of potential Tim Berners-Lees that we can pop out over the next few years. Imagine this, 25 years ago, let's just call him Tim, in a basement, I don't know why I always imagine it as a basement, in CERN, producing a piece of paper that he then handed to his boss. And on the top of the piece of paper, his boss wrote, "Vague but interesting." Well, it was pretty interesting, as it turned into one of the most fundamental changes, you could argue, that mankind has ever seen, and something that we as a country should be immensely proud of. I believe that Tim's founding principles were based on openness, transparency, and really importantly, inclusion. I'm sure you all remember that magic moment at the Olympics when the house lifted up and there was Tim, the Uber geek, at his keyboard. This is for everyone. That's very, very important to me. This is for everyone. I was so lucky to help start lastminute.com, and I am absolutely incensed that we still have so many people in this country, 11 million adults, who can't do 4 basic things online. Let alone the fact that we're going to need nearly 1 million more ICT jobs by 2020. We need to make sure that This is for Everyone really does live on to celebrate the 25th birthday. And coding is a big part of that. Coding isn't just about trying to become the next Tim Berners-Lee. It's about understanding what's behind the machine, having a bit more of a sense of the incredible creativity and the incredible skill that goes into making some of the things that we rely on every day. And how fabulous if out of that we can have a few more Tims, or even Timothenas perhaps, pop out the other end. The Year of Code is launching right now, so you all need to get on the website, yearofcode.org, and see the fantastic set of resources that will teach you how to code. There are lots of organisations that are part of this campaign. There's the Hour of Code, I know Avid's somewhere here in the audience, that are also going to be working on one of the first launch events over the next couple of weeks. Then there's organisations like Apps for Good, Freeformers, Code Academy, Decoded, all of these people, Code Club, I'm bound to have missed one, I'm sorry, all of whom are raising the bar in terms of our incredible coding skills in this country. So please, don't stop. Don't feel like you can't be included. Think this is for everyone and get involved. But I do have a secret. I can't actually code. Please don't tell anyone, because I have managed to wing it this far. And I mainly managed to wing it because at lastminute.com, on my desk, I would keep a massive book that said Java. And everybody that was in the tech team would come down and look at my desk and think, maybe she does know. Maybe she does know whether it's any good or not. But I couldn't. So I'm going to be the first person straight on that website, yearofcode.org, and I'll be there making sure I can finally learn. But please don't tell everyone. But now it's my great privilege to introduce someone who I think actually is a lot smarter than me for a number of reasons. I don't know how many of you recently saw The Economist article about what jobs were not going to exist when technology takes over. But number 1 was accountancy, and number 2 was auditing. So I think the Chancellor is here today because he's slightly frightened. Doesn't know whether he's going to have a job or not. And actually, if he learns to code, guess what? He knows he will. So my great privilege to welcome George Osborne. Thank you.
The footage on Vine only lasts for 7 seconds.
Well, Martha, thank you very much. In fact, we first met about 25 years ago, and I remember then how excited and enthused you were about the internet and its potential at a time when, frankly, very few other people in our country, let alone people I knew, were aware of it. And you have been an incredible champion for making sure that our country is online and that the people who don't necessarily have all the advantages in life can make use of the incredible advantages that tech and the digital economy offers us. It's a great place to have this discussion, because this building and the Royal Society of Arts were created out of the Enlightenment and the set of ideas that gave birth to the Industrial Revolution. And the movement that represented was to change our world in ways that the people who first created the Royal Society here had little idea. And we are undergoing, the people who are alive today, are part of another industrial revolution, a tech revolution, that is transforming the way our society operates, transforming the power structures in our community, transforming the way that citizens interact with their government, transforming business, transforming our economy. And it's an incredibly exciting period of our nation's history to be alive. Now, that technology revolution is something that it's very difficult for economists to predict, or the Treasury to forecast exactly where it's going to take us. And there's no way that if someone who had been doing my job 20 years ago had stood on this stage, they would have predicted that you need tens of thousands of web designers in Britain. They might have predicted, indeed should have predicted, we need more people who are good at engineering and mathematics and science, and belatedly, we are now trying to increase the number of people in our schools and colleges and universities doing those subjects. But we couldn't have forecast where the world would take us, and we can't forecast where the world is going to take us in the future. But we can be sure of at least some things. One is that we're going to want to be supporting those with entrepreneurial ideas in this new economy. And one of the most exciting things about my job is I meet these entrepreneurs who've literally created enormous businesses out of their basements or their bedrooms and broken down those barriers to entry that previously existed if you wanted to create companies that would reach and sell things to millions of people. And what we tried to do in my job and as part of this government is create opportunities for those entrepreneurs, make sure the tax system supports people who've started companies, give startup loans to 12,000 people, many of whom in the tech sector, many of whom will want to get involved in tech. These are often kids just leaving university or more likely school who don't necessarily have any money that they can draw on in their family, but we give them a loan to start a business, and there are many of these businesses flourishing. We also, and Rohan must take a lot of credit here, because he used to work in 10 Downing Street, we backed this idea, which at the time was known as Silicon Roundabout, which was a small group of technology companies that had already started to grow around the Old Street roundabout. And thanks to Roe getting the government involved, thanks to the people who had already had the germ of a brilliant idea, Tech City was born. And just yesterday, we had Joanna Shields, who runs Tech City, in the cabinet room telling some of the top business people in Britain about the extraordinary growth of that sector, that part of our capital city, and indeed telling us about exciting things happening elsewhere in the United Kingdom, like the video game cluster up in Dundee. And so government can make sure there's the right tax system to support entrepreneurship. It can back people who don't otherwise have resources to set up their own company. It can back particular parts of the country where something exciting is happening. But ultimately, as a country, we're not going to be part of this tech revolution if we are just the users of technology rather than the creators of technology. And I remember Ro was reminiscing about his days in detention. I was in the computer club at that time of the evening, and that was right at the beginning of the personal computer revolution, and the ZX80 and the ZX81 were the computers, and then the Spectrum and the BBC Micro. And what was interesting was, although there were very early days of home computing, and there was the very first computers in schools, actually the kids in the school were taught a bit of programming, partly because there weren't many programs available, so you had to go and write your own. And I'm not pretending that I was any good at it. I don't think I got much further than mastering BASIC. But what I think has happened in our schools, and I'm not blaming anyone in particular, it's a whole succession of governments and an approach, is that we thought it was important to get computers into schools, and then we thought it was important to have computer suites, and we equipped all our schools with these things, and then we sat the kids down and we taught them how to use Word and Excel and programs like that. And of course that is incredibly important if you want to make sure that when a kid leaves school at 16 or 18, or if they go to college or university, they are equipped to do many of the jobs in our community. But I think we forgot to teach them how these programs were put together. And in the last few years, there's been a bit of a change and a bit of a revolution going on, not driven actually necessarily by the national government or the school system, but actually by things like Code Academy, and it's good to see Zach here, by Raspberry Pi. I've got a 10-year-old and a 12-year-old, and my 10-year-old daughter is on Code Academy at the moment. That's what she likes to spend her evenings doing. My son built the Raspberry Pi computer that we saw the kids downstairs doing. And there is a generation who are teaching themselves, thanks to the many people who are helping, about coding. But ultimately, I think government does have a responsibility, and as a government that runs a national school system, we have a responsibility to make sure that every kid at least has a chance to understand more about the world around them. Not just because it's good for our economy, it's because it's what education is all about. And that is why we've got this very big step change in our society taking place this autumn, when coding will become part of our national curriculum. And every kid in every school is going to be learning about what goes into making a computer program, as well as how we use computer programs. Now, of course, they're not all going to go on and be the Larry Pages or the Martha Lane Foxes of the world. But some of them will, we hope. But many of them will go on to have jobs in tech, because tech is one of the fastest growing and fastest job creating sectors of our economy. And all of them, I hope, will have a bit more of an understanding of the world around them. And that ultimately is what education is for. It's ultimately what the Enlightenment was all about those hundreds of years ago. So that is why I've been so excited about this development. I think it's going to be a really substantial change. It's probably one of the most important things that this government has done for the future of our economy. But it's not something happening in the bowels of the Treasury. It's something happening in every school around the country. And on that note, I want to thank Michael Gove for his support in delivering this, and ask him to come up and say something about it. Michael.
I'd like to thank George very much. If politicians were apps, which apps would they be? Some of us might be Instagram, concerned only about image with scarcely any substance whatsoever. Others of us might be Snapchat. Big impression, very surprising, but leaving absolutely no trace after a short period of time. But most of us are a bit like Vine and a bit like Twitter. Like Vine, we've only got a short period of time to make an impact. And like Twitter, we can only rely on a limited number of characters to get our message across. And there are a few characters that I want to pay tribute to now, very briefly. This is not just the 25th anniversary of the World Wide Web, it's also the 25th anniversary of the national curriculum. And one of the people who absolutely believed that technology should be at the heart of education was a guy who did my job before I did it, and who's still going strong, and that's Ken Baker, Lord Baker. He was the man who responded to the massive growth and the interest in computing that the BBC and Sir Clive Sinclair generated in the 1980s by putting ICT into the curriculum. And as George pointed out, that was great and it was a breakthrough. But as we all know, nothing dates faster than the cutting edge. And one of the things we found, and exactly as George said, it was no individual's fault, is that the ICT curriculum over time became stale and pale and off the pace. And it was all about using applications, but not about designing them, understanding them, creating. And that was a great waste. And one of the people who blew the whistle on that waste was Ian Livingstone, who is a giant in the computer games industry, who was knocking on government's door, and he was one of the co-authors of the Livingstone Hope report, which said that we needed to change the way in which our national curriculum reflected how technology could change lives. And adding another character, adding his weight to that argument, was Eric Schmidt from Google, when he came to deliver the McTaggart Lecture at the Edinburgh International Television Festival, and he said, "What has happened to Britain? You were the country that invented the computer, you were the country of Babbage and Turing, and now what's happening in your schools?" Faced with what Ian Livingstone was saying, what Eric Schmidt was saying, what I was hearing from my own children, I realised that action needed to be taken. And with the help of a much wider cast of characters, with the help of people from Google, from the British Computer Society, from Microsoft, and many of the people here, including those behind Code Academy, and the fantastic new technological breakthrough Kano, which will enable children to be able to construct their own computer and begin coding in minutes. Thanks to that cast of characters, we're on the brink of a huge transformation. And as George says, teaching children how to code will unlock for them economic opportunities, but it will also unlock for them a world of creativity and fun. Coding is going to be the language of the future, just as much as Latin was the language of the Roman Empire. It will be the way in which the next generation leaves behind works of art that will astonish and generate awe, and will also ensure that we can talk to each other across divides and create new ways of collaborating and bringing all sorts of benefits to future generations. And learning how to code, learning computer science, learning to think computationally will also ensure that children in this country are able to make the future their own. They're able to become not just authors of programs, but authors of their own life story. That's why I think the Year of Code is such a fantastic initiative. That's why we're putting our money where our mouth is. That's why today I can announce that we'll be spending £500,000 to match fund the work that's going on in schools in order to ensure that more young people can benefit from the changes that we're making to our curriculum. And that's why I want to congratulate everyone. Matthew Taylor, who runs the Royal Society of Arts, John Brown, Martha Lane Fox, the Chancellor of the Exchequer, and all of you for helping to make this launch of the Year of Code such a fantastic success. Thank you all very much.